everybody. Thank you for joining us here today. We're very glad to be here, and we're very grateful to the Weston Public Library for allowing this concert series to continue despite the pandemic. We're glad to be able to play music, whether in person or in this digital format as we have here today. My name is Shelley, and I'm going to be playing some harp music for you today. One of my favorite things about the harp is the wide array of music that can be played on it. It's a very old instrument, and it goes all the way back to 3500 BC and probably even earlier than that. And as a result, as the world cultures developed, many of them developed with the harp as part of their musical tradition. And as I've learned how to play this instrument, I've really enjoyed learning more about those traditions and the context of what can be played on this instrument and the many different sounds that it can make. So I'll be sharing more about that with you as part of the program today. I'm going to play one song by myself, and then I'm going to be joined by percussionist Fabio Pirozzolo, who's going to play various percussion instruments associated with the musical traditions that we'll be playing from. And he's also going to play some chitarra battente, which is an Italian folk instrument. This song is called Gaeta, and it's written by a harpist and composer named Diego Fernandez de Huete. It's from a collection of pieces called Compendio Numeroso, and it dates from right around the turn of the 18th century, 1702. So, as I mentioned, that song is from right around the turn of the 18th century. I believe it's 1702. Um, and the harps at that time were actually pretty similar to this one in terms of shape and how they function. The shape was a little bit different. This was more rounded here at the top. But it was about 70 years after that, they started developing the pedal harp, which evolved into the modern pedal harp, which is the one that you see in orchestras. It's larger and more ornate, and it's what most people, when they think of a harp, they think of that. But there's many different kinds of harps that exist in the world, and we're gonna talk a little bit about some of those. So this next song is called La Peta Kita, and it comes from Chile. It's a traditional Chilean song. The South American harp tradition is one that I didn't know about until I took a trip to Mexico and I encountered a Mexican harpist there, and I absolutely fell in love with his music. I was floored by how he played, and I didn't speak Spanish at the time. I really wanted to ask him, how do you play in that way? Because I really wanted to know. But it prompted me to learn Spanish and then go back. And so a few years later, I ended up going to South America instead. I went to Chile and I found a couple of harpists there. This is Daniela. She was wonderful to talk to, and we had a very nice harp lesson exchange. That I also traveled to Ecuador and was able to find a couple of harpists there. This is Taita Chavo. He's holding my travel harp, which is a harpsicle. That's the brand of harp. His harps you can see in the lower left corner. He had bought his first harp and then he took it apart and so he could see how it was made. And he made his second harp and he was in the process of finishing his third harp when I visited. This is a picture of an Ecuadorian 17th century harp that I saw in a museum there in Cotacachi, Ecuador. Historians believe that the Spanish brought the harp to South America in the 16th century when they colonized it. And then the people there took the harp and then made their own musical style from it. That's absolutely beautiful. The South American harp is traditionally made from pine or cedar, and the strings have a very light tension, which allows the player to play very quickly. And it also gives it a very bright sound. So that's one of the differences between this harp and the South American. Anyway, this song is called La Peta Kita, the song I learned from Daniela. The way it works in the traditional style is that you play the main theme and then the harpist comes up with their own variations, and your skill as a harpist depends on your creativity and dexterity in creating those variations. So anytime you hear this song, it's going to be different for every harpist that plays it. But I learned the main theme from Daniela, and Fabio is going to join me on the maracas. So now we're going to go to Italy. There was a classical, or there is a classical music tradition in Italy. They had in the Renaissance, they had what's called a double harp, which had 2 rows of strings. But the song that we're going to be focusing on today comes from the folk harp tradition, the Italian folk harp tradition. It comes out of a small village in the southern part of Italy called Viggiano, and it's in the region of Basilicata. And it's near the sole, the bottom of the foot, if you think of Italy as a boot. And it goes back, as far as we know, it goes back at least until the 18th century. That's the earliest written mention of it that anyone can find. It's probably older than that. But the town of Viggiano was actually known for its musicians. They would go throughout Italy and play their own songs from their own region, and also songs from other areas such as Naples and anywhere they went. They traditionally learned the harp from a family member or maybe a friend. It was passed on from person to person like that. And in the 20th century, the tradition almost died out. There were fewer and fewer harpists. Luckily, a young person met one of the harpists, and this was within the past 10 years or so. They met one of the harpists, and they learned, and they started a harp school. So the tradition is thankfully being preserved. This song is called Tarantella di Sanicandro. Tarantella is a dance form that's usually in 6/8 and played very fast, and it comes from a tradition where historically people, if they would get bitten by the tarantula spider, obviously it's a poisonous spider, so what do you do when you get bitten by a poisonous spider? You call musicians. And traditionally in Italy, the musicians would come, and the person who had been bitten was supposed to dance to this music very fast and very frantically until all the poison had come out. And the tradition goes, sometimes the musicians would check in and with the person dancing, the person who was bitten, they're like, are you feeling better? Are you still okay? And they would say, no, I need more music. Please keep playing. So that's the Tarantella tradition. Fabio is going to be playing the chitarra battente, which is a traditional Southern Italian folk instrument in the same family as the guitar. It's actually very similar to a Baroque guitar. And he's also going to be playing the electric bass. And that may seem a little strange in a presentation about traditional music, but the tarantella is an unbroken tradition. It's been being played and danced for centuries, and as time has gone on and as instruments have changed, the dance form has grown with the instruments. So there's a lot of people in Italy today that play tarantelle with modern instruments.
Ora la passaria alla ve, ora la passaria alla ve, se non la va a parlare, se non la va a parlare, se non la va a parlare, tutta la pena si mangerai. Vi non ci vai a monte per non fare l'anghianata, non ci vai a monte per non fare l'anghianata, prima di tacca e poi di punta, tutte le giovane vanno a monte, prima di tacca e poi di punta, tutte le giovane vanno a monte. Lezzi e lezzi, muccatore a 4 pizzi, lezzi e lezzi, muccatore a 4 pizzi, muccatore arregamato, muccatore arregamato, muccatore arregamato, zita mia posso redare. lì, tu lo sai, c'è tengo io. Lì, tu lo sai, c'è tengo io. Gli tengo un'occhi alla se lo vire quanto è bella. Gli tengo un'occhi alla se lo vire quanto è bella. Gli tengo un'occhi alla se lo vire quanto è bella. Gli tengo un'occhi alla se lo vire quanto è bella. Passariella dalla ve, ora la passariella dalla ve, non la va a parlare, se non la va a parlare, se non la va a parlare, tutta la pena si mangerà. E non ci vai a monte per non fare l'angelo, e non ci vai a monte per non fare l'angelo, che poi da punta tutte le giovane vanno. Che poi da punta tutta la io me ne vado. Le sellezze moccatore a quattro pezzi, le sellezze moccatore a quattro pezzi, moccatore a regamata, moccatore a regamata, moccatore a regamata, zita mia valsera. Tenga io, oh quelle della sai c'è tenga io, no c'è la se lo vede quanto è bella, io tengo no c'è la se lo vede quanto è bella, io tengo no c'è la se lo vede quanto è bella, io tengo no c'è la se lo vede quanto è bella, io tengo no c'è la se lo vede quanto è bella, io tengo no c'è la se lo vede quanto è bella, io tengo no c'è la se lo vede quanto è bella. Tengono cielo si lo vede quanto è bella, si lo vede quanto è bella, si lo vede quanto è bella, si lo vede quanto è bella.
So this song comes from an African instrument called an ngoni. It's from Mali, and it's similar to the kora in terms of structure and how it's played. Both the kora and the ngoni and also the harp come from the same ancestor, so they're related. This is a picture of a harp from ancient Egypt. It's about 3,000 years old, historians believe. It was found in a tomb, and it's made out of wood, and it's currently in the British Museum. Historians believe that the harp was originally developed from a bow and arrow, and you can really see that here in this picture. This kind of looks like a bow with a few extra strings attached and a sound box to help it sound bigger. The harps in Africa today have retained a similar shape where it doesn't have the front piece that the European harps do. This is a picture of a harp from Africa that I saw in the Musical Instrument Museum in Phoenix, Arizona several years ago. And I, unfortunately, in my enthusiasm, did not write down which part of Africa this is from, but there's harps from all over Africa, and they vary a lot in shapes and the artistry of how they're put together. This one, you can see the sound box has been carved to look like a part of a person. And this is a picture of ngoni, which is where the song that we're about to play comes from. Fabio is going to be playing an instrument called the calabash, which also comes from Africa. It's made out of a gourd, a large gourd that gets hard when it ripens, and there's shells on it as well that add an extra sound when you play it. So we took a vamp that is typical of the instrument of the Ngoni, and we added our own improvisations and also some modern compositional techniques called looping. And we call it, for its namesake, Ngoni. So now we're going to go to Ireland, which is another place that has a strong and vibrant harp tradition. All of the countries in the British Isles do. They have the harp as part of them. The earliest evidence of the harp in the British Isles that I know of is in one of the Pictish stones from Scotland. And this is from somewhere around the 8th century, but historians believe that harps were probably in the British Isles from before that. They think that the Phoenicians brought the harp up several centuries before this, but this is the earliest pictorial evidence that we have. One of the oldest harps from Ireland that is still in existence today is the Trinity College harp. It's also known as the Brian Boru harp. Historians have kind of debated how old it is, but they've kind of settled on that it comes from the 15th century. The harps of this time had wire strings which have a very bright sound and they ring for a long time. By contrast, my harp is made out of nylon strings and fluorocarbon. The Irish harpers from this time were known throughout Europe for their ability to play very fast and yet with amazing accuracy. There was a long tradition, an unbroken tradition of harpists learning from one another and passing down their music until about the end of the 18th century. And it was at that time there were very few left, and they all got together and asked this man named Edward Bunting to write down their music, and he did, but he only wrote down the melody. He didn't write down how they played the accompaniment part. And later he took those melodies and he made piano arrangements for keyboard, but he didn't write down note for note how the harpers were playing. So we do have a sense of the melodies of their songs, but we don't know how they actually played the songs. A little bit after that, in the 1800s, there was a school established in Ireland to teach blind people how to play the harp. But at this time, the pedal harp was gaining popularity, and that has gut strings and a very different technique and way of playing. And harp makers began making the Irish harps with gut strings instead of wire strings. And it changed the tradition into something a little different than what it had been in ancient times. The song that we're going to be playing is called Within a Mile of Dublin, and no one knows exactly how old it is. It's just a traditional song. So this arrangement incorporates both elements of the traditional Celtic harp style of playing and the more modern one that's evolved in the past couple of years. So I don't have time to cover all of the harp traditions. I by no means have covered all of them. There's a very strong harp tradition in Norway, in Scotland, in Wales, and many other places in the world. But we have time for one more song. And this brings us to the jazz portion of the program. As music changed, the harp also changed with it, and the method of playing and everything. And there's a lot of fantastic jazz harpists out there. Dorothy Ashby, Alice Coltrane, Deborah Henson Conant. It's a living and vibrant tradition. Normally I would play a jazz standard for you, but I'm going to play a song that I call Jazzy Joys, my arrangement of Beethoven's Ode to Joy. And I stumbled on this by accident. I was doing something in it just came out and I was like, oh, well, it was a mistake, but I liked it. So then I took that and I went with it and built this song. I hope that you've enjoyed our time together. If you do want to hear more of my music, I have an album on Spotify. You can sign up for my mailing list. I have another album coming out this year, a single coming out very soon, and hopefully more concerts coming up. You can sign up on my mailing list to hear more about it, or you can follow me on Facebook or Instagram, or just look me up online. Jazzy Joy.